Welcome to Season 8 of Radio Free 501c, brought to you by Rogue Tulips Consulting. Don't forget to subscribe or follow us. We're in Season 8 and we still have a lot to talk about. Radio Free 501c is supported by USAE News, the weekly community newspaper of Association CVBs and hotels. Learn more at usaenews.com. This week, we're welcoming back Lidia Varesco Racoma. She's a brand strategist and marketing designer with her own company, and she'll tell you about that. We're talking about branding in a noisy world. It's episode 313 and January 19th, 2026. Hey, everybody, it's Monday, January 19th, and welcome to episode 313 of Radio Free 501c, brought to you by Rogue Tulips Consulting and USAE News, our partner in support for the podcast. So we thank them for that. I'm your host, Cecilia Sepp. I'm the principal and founder of Rogue Tulips Consulting, and so glad you're here with us this week. We have a returning guest already for the year. I'm very excited to welcome back Lidia Varesco Racoma. And we're going to talk about branding in a noisy world. But before we do that, I would like to encourage you to subscribe or follow us on your favorite podcast service if you haven't already. We are well past the 300 episode mark, and we have a lot more to talk about. So, Lidia, welcome back. I'm so glad you're here. Last time you were here just a few months ago, we were talking about content calendars, and now we're upping the game with branding in a noisy world. But before we dive into the conversation, would you like to say hello and tell the audience a little about yourself?
Yes, I would love to. First of all, thank you for having me back, Cecilia. We had such a great conversation last time, and I love your podcast, so I'm really excited to be back. And especially in January, this is a great time to have a fresh start. But I am Lidia Varesco Racoma of Lidia Varesco Design in Chicago. I am a brand strategist and a marketing designer, and I work primarily with mission-focused organizations. So that means nonprofits, associations, higher ed, social entrepreneurs, and other businesses that are really mission-focused. That has been my passion for quite some time. In fact, I celebrated 25 years in business last November. So I've been doing this for quite some time. I love it. And I'm also a speaker, as you can tell. I really love doing educational types of speaking, as well as podcasts and things like this, where I can really sit down and chat with someone. That's one of my favorite things to do.
Well, let me congratulate you again on 25 years in business. That is awesome.
Thank you. Yes, it's exciting. I still can't believe I'm here. It feels like, my goodness, I just started my business, because when you start your business, you probably know as well, you say, okay, I'm gonna give it a year and see how things go. And then next thing you're like, oh, it's 5 years later. How did that happen? 10 years later. So yes, I feel very, very fortunate to be here. And I'm doing sort of a 25 and 25 series, where I'm looking back at the last 25 years and of my work and clients I've worked with. And it's just wonderful. I wouldn't be here for so long if it wasn't for these wonderful clients, mainly nonprofits, that I'm working with. So I'm very grateful for that.
Oh, well, that's wonderful. And, that's a great example of branding, because you're obviously doing something right. You have a great reputation out there, and people want to keep working with you. So what do you think defines a brand?
Yes, well, I love that you asked that, because I have a quote that I always include when I do my branding workshops and webinars. And it's from Marty Neumeier, who is a branding expert and an author. He's written quite a few books on branding that I highly recommend. But he says a brand is not a logo. A brand is a person's gut feeling about a product, service, or organization. And I love that, because I feel like people, when they think of branding, they do think of like, oh, it's my website, it's my logo, it's my brochure. And it is all of those things indeed, but it's also your values, how you interact with people, the emotions that people feel when they're interacting with you, the experience that they have. So I love that in his quote, he says that gut feeling, that because really that's what it is. And we can't tell people, oh, this is our brand, like they need to kind of experience that for themselves. I think that's really kind of a key thing to remember.
It's so good that you shared that quote because that's also what I tell people when we talk about what is brand, because brand's your reputation. And very
Yes.
much like that quote you just shared, it's that feeling people get when they hear the name of your organization.
Hmm.
So when they hear the name of any nonprofit, whether it's an association or social service group or a foundation, how do they feel when they hear your name? Do they
Yes.
feel good? Do they feel ambivalent? Do they feel, I don't know who these people are? And
Hmm.
I think emphasizing it isn't just the logo. And we do need a strong tagline, but it's also not that. It's all those things, like you said, and the website and the brochures are tools that help us expand our reach and help us emphasize what our brand stands for. But
Hmm.
how do you feel about the position that really your brand, which is your reputation, really depends on how we as individuals perform in the marketplace?
Yes, I mean, I think another sort of soundbite that I had written down was that branding is perception plus interaction. So it's really how people, like you said, what do they think and feel when they see your logo, when they, hear something about your organization, and then how do they feel when they're interacting with you? So whether it is they're making a donation, whether they decide they want to be a volunteer, whether they're sharing it with someone else, sharing a fundraiser or something. It really is about that perception and that interaction. And the part of branding that people think of, which is the logo, the website, that is all part of that because through your visuals, you're telling people who you are through your messaging, you're telling people again who we are, what we stand for, what's important to us, what our mission is. And that's really how people are developing that perception and that emotional feeling that they have when they interact with your brand.
That is a great equation, perception plus interaction. I
Hmm.
love that. So easy to understand and so true. Now, one of the things we wanted to talk about is branding in a noisy world. The world
Yes.
is very noisy right now. I think it'll quiet down eventually.
Yes,
So
we hope.
we hope. But there's 24-hour news. There's thousands of cable channels. There's instant messaging. There's
Mhm.
texting. There's social media. And there's always a new social media tool popping up. There's millions of podcasts, although most of them don't get much past 3 episodes. And
Right.
according to the data, the ones that do get past 3 don't get much past 20.
Oh my
So,
goodness.
but they still sit out there. So, they're
Right.
still available. So there's a lot of options out there.
Yes.
There's online communities. There's real-time conferencing, like when we do Zoom or Teams. So it's a very
Mhm.
noisy world. So, with all your experience in the area of branding for organizations, what are some of the things you have seen that help people stand out when it is such a noisy
Mhm.
world?
Yes. So I have three areas that I think that help nonprofits stand out. The first one is the visual recognition. So that really, so now we are talking about your logo. We're talking
Mhm.
about your brand colors, kind of the way that you're putting your brand out there visually. That's important because when you have a strong brand, a visual brand, so that means your logo, your color palette, the graphics that you use in your social posts or your other marketing pieces, when you have all of that, then you become recognizable. So people, see it and they recognize it. So whether they're seeing like a billboard, advertising on the back of a bus, like they immediately say, "Oh, I know what that is. That's this organization." Like American Red Cross is a perfect example. Everybody knows that brand. If you see that brand, you know it. You've grown up with it, you've seen it around. And we want all of our brands to have, maybe they won't have that extreme recognition, but we want them to have the recognition, in that situation where somebody will say, "Oh, I know that brand because of, whatever it was, the experience that they had." So that's the first part is the visual recognition. The second part is having targeted messaging. So really thinking about your audience. So when I talk about branding, I have a framework, which is your who, what, and why. So when you're developing your messaging, you're thinking about all of those parts, the who, what, and why, but you're starting with the who. So who are we talking to? Who is our audience? Do they know what we do? And I will say one of the top challenges when organizations come to me for help is people don't understand what we do, and sometimes even internally, they're like, we're kind of struggling internally with what we do because either it's sort of a complicated concept or we do so many things or everybody's kind of doing their own thing. So that's also important is really to know who you are as an organization, why it matters, and to express that to people. And then the last part is really the trust and the credibility that a strong brand builds. And that would be, again, we're looking at your outreach. So are you consistently, posting on social media? You're sending out your email newsletter, regularly to your audience. You are hosting events, people are coming. So it's really, through that experience. So, so we kind of talked about like how a part of brand is really that experience. Through that experience, you are building that trust and credibility. So people are saying, yes, this is a legitimate organization. They are doing good things. They are showing me the impact that they're having. It's apparent to me why I should be supporting this organization or somehow, promoting them. Because a lot of times, if someone comes across an organization somewhere, if it's unfamiliar to them, they might say, well, who is this? Should I be giving them my money? Are they legitimate? Are they actually doing what they say they're doing? So that's a big part. So really, it's that visual recognition, it's that targeted messaging that you're putting out, and then building that trust and credibility.
And I think that is a great outline. I think everybody could follow that. But I think where we sometimes fall down is with consistency.
Yes.
And if you do a lot of things, it's very difficult to get people to think of one thing when they think of you. So, like,
Hmm.
I'll use myself as an example. My company, Tulips Consulting, it stands out because it's got a cool name, very
Hmm.
unique, easy to
Yep.
remember. But a lot of times people say, what is it you do? Because
Hmm.
I do so many things. I have done so many things. And so
Right.
focusing on the expertise I bring and the knowledge I bring is really the best starting point
Hmm.
because that's really the thing. But then what do you actually do, Cecilia? Well, I do a lot of things, but
Right. Right.
it's really and it is hard, even for an individual. I mean, I'm just one person. Imagine trying to do that for an entire organization. I mean, it's very
Yes.
challenging. So I think that is really the important thing, and also making sure that everybody, volunteer leaders, the whole staff, understand what is the brand message. What is it we want people
Yes.
to think and feel when they hear our name? So do you have any advice about that? Like, how can we make sure we're doing that consistently with all of the different segments that make up our groups?
Yes, definitely. So that's where our brand guide comes in. And that's another topic that I love, love, love talking about because I feel like everybody needs to have a brand guide, but then also use that brand guide. So don't just let it sit, on a shared drive. Make sure that you are actually using the brand guide regularly. And oh, excuse me, just for that reason that you mentioned, which is, sometimes you kind of forget, who are our audiences? What is the messaging for each of those audiences? And how are we, wanting to speak to those audiences? So having that brand guide handy, looking at it. In fact, with a lot of my clients, I end up creating what I call a brand guide at a glance. And it's really just maybe like a one pager. Oh, and incidentally, I got this idea from the American Red Cross because they have a wonderful brand guide at a glance that I came across. I do a lot of research, just to see how other people are doing their brand guides. And they have a wonderful version of their brand guide, which is like a poster. And they call it, the brand guide at a glance. And it shows, the logo usage, their colors, their like elevator pitch. It's really kind of, boiling it down to those things that people would need kind of on a daily basis because, maybe every single day you're not going to need to read through all your audience profiles and your personas. But every day it would be good to refresh your memory on your elevator pitch, your mission, the maybe the key words that signify your brand. So highly recommend having that, brand guide at a glance.
I love
And
that.
then also, referring to the standard, brand guide whenever you're creating something new, especially, and making sure that, okay, is our messaging aligned? Have we kind of gotten a little bit lazy and we're just kind of, writing things, but we're not really thinking in a brand strategy mindset? So yes, highly recommend having those two pieces and then using those regularly.
A brand guide at a glance, a one pager. What? An easy
Yes,
reference guide? Who would have thought of it?
it was
It's
brilliant when I saw it.
it's great. Now, is there a difference? I'm going to ask a question I think the audience might ask you. Is there a difference between a brand guide and a style guide?
Yes, so there's, that comes up quite often. And I've done both with clients. And I feel like a brand guide is really more about the visuals, the messaging, how you are expressing your brand, how it's positioned. Um, Quite often, I will also include design templates. So, I just did one recently where we had templates for the letterhead, the meeting agendas, the Zoom background, all of those templates are included in the brand guide so people can easily access them. Now, the style guide, sometimes those tend to focus a little bit more on maybe the writing style. So, how do you want to talk about your organization? I think that people, can use those sometimes interchangeably because I do sometimes create a logo style guide, which is kind of like a scaled back version of that full brand guide where we're just kind of focusing on the logo, the colors, the typography, not necessarily talking as much about messaging. So I would say like a true style guide is a little bit more focused on the verbiage, the writing style, at least in my experience. Like I have a style guide for my business, which I give to my virtual assistant, which details kind of like, this is my tone of voice that I write in. This is kind of the style that I use for writing blogs. Headlines are in sentence case, that type of thing. These are the keywords I like to include. So, like a true style guide, I think is a little bit more aligned with kind of your message, the messaging aspects, whereas the brand guide is really kind of like, who are we? How are we presenting that to the world?
Wow, that is great differentiation because I think that is the sort of thing we all would ask.
Hmm.
When I think of a style guide, I think of that like what font am I supposed to use and
Hmm.
when and things like that. So I'd like to move into talking about the evolution of branding
Hmm. Yes.
after that. Thank you for that great comparison because as the world changes and organizations grow and change and evolve, some organizations change their name.
Hmm.
Some change their mission statement. Their mission's the same, but maybe they update the mission to be a
Hmm.
little clearer
Yes.
in a noisy world. But one of the brand, I'm going to call it what I think it is. You might think it's fine. I think the Nike rebrand was a disaster.
Hmm.
I think it really damaged their reputation. I think it damaged what people think of when they think of Nike because they went
Hmm.
from just do it to why do it. And
Right.
too many people had to explain it too many times, which says to
Right.
me it was probably not a good choice because why
Yes.
do it makes it sound like, why do it? You know,
Right. Right.
it's just why do it? And they said, well, we're trying to talk to the younger generations. Well, I know a lot of real active, let's do it, let's get it done, younger generation members myself. So I think that's an example of maybe a devolution of a
Right.
brand, but I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? I know they were trying to grow and change.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, with an established brand, it's tricky. You really have to be careful about that brand affinity that's been developed, that kind of feeling that people have about your brand. Because it's really easy to to alienate people if all of the sudden you're saying, oh, we were this, but now we're this. So
Hmm.
I feel like, really there has to be a good reason to rebrand. And rebrands can run the gamut from, oh, we want to refresh our logo. So quite often I'll do that with clients where, like you said, there might be a name change or it's just outdated. We just really want to sort of bring it into today's day and age. And that's a little bit easier because we're just looking visually. So we're saying, okay, let's refresh the logo. Let's kind of look at who you are now and make it reflect that a little bit better than maybe this, old-fashioned logo you've been using for the last 50 years. So that's one part of it. And then there's sort of that whole, we have a new mission, we have a new message we want to get out to people, we have a new audience we're targeting. And that's where it can get tricky because you have to really remember those people, especially if it's an organization that's been around for a long time. You don't want to say, okay, we don't care about those people anymore that have been with us, supporting us for the last 50 years. Now we're only concerned about this new generation of supporters. So that's tricky. So I think that, um, you really have to find a way to sort of honor the history, but yet bring it into where we are now, because, the last thing you want is really a brand that feels kind of old and irrelevant. But you don't want to completely, forget about all of the brand awareness and affinity that you've created along the way. So it's tricky. It's definitely tricky. And I've had clients where they have rebranded and then we have to sort of well, now people don't know that it's us, so then we have to sort of, okay, put a line, formerly known as, or, kind of make sure that we kind of remind people we used to be, here's our old logo. This is who we used to be. Don't forget us. This is who we are now. So that's definitely something to keep in mind if you rebrand, is like, how are you going to let people know who you are so they're not like, this is a completely different organization.
Well, and that's a really good point. I've seen that where people change their name because maybe two nonprofit organizations merge, and so they have a new
Yes.
name, and so they have to put that on there so you know what's going on. But another rebrand disaster that we all saw last year was the Cracker Barrel
Oh my
rebrand.
goodness.
And
Yes.
yes, that was a nightmare because, frankly, we find comfort in certain things that, seemed like they're stable. So Cracker Barrel
Right.
seemed very stable, maybe a little old fashioned, but I think of it more as nostalgic. It's
Right.
like you use the example of the American Red Cross, and I think we all know what they do. We all feel good about the American Red Cross,
Hmm.
and they're always there, and their logo doesn't ever change, and they're
Yes.
always
Yes.
there to help people. And it makes us feel safer and
Yes.
calmer and more stable. And I think when you have something like Cracker Barrel that gives you comfort food,
Right.
and then they come and they're like, oh no, we're going to change everything. And then they wonder why people push back. And now they're back to the old logo. So,
Right.
are there some lessons for nonprofit organizations in the Cracker Barrel example?
I mean, I think the lesson is, don't change just for changing sake. I think that, again, you really have to look at your audience. And with nonprofits in particular, a lot of them do have, donors and supporters that have been with them for a long time.
Mhm.
So I understand the need to change and evolve and reach a younger audience. That I had presented a workshop yesterday, and one of the questions was around that, kind of, we understand that we have these younger donors now, and we need to reach them as well, as well as our kind of established donors. So you have to find a way, I think, to really kind of balance. So, not necessarily say, hey, we're just kind of bored with our logo, we're going to change it. Really make sure there's a good reason behind it and that it's backed by research.
Mhm.
Have you done your research and are people saying, like, hey, we don't get what you do, or there has to be a sort of a research-based reason, I think, as well behind a rebrand. Um, and then strategic. So is there something maybe in your strategic plan that is directly kind of leading you in that direction? And like you said, so it might be two organizations coming together where, yes, now we have to make that decision of which name do we use? Do we come up with a whole new name? So I think really, knowing kind of the reason behind it, making sure again that it's rooted in some sort of research, whether it is just kind of people telling you, things, um, and having a pretty good reason because it's a big deal. It really is a big deal. And the last thing you want is to make people mad. And make them feel alienated and make them feel like, hey, I've been supporting this organization and all of a sudden, I don't know who they are. So that would be my advice for a rebrand. Don't take it lightly.
Well, and I would think we don't want that reaction. I don't even recognize you. It's sort of
Yes,
like, what have you done to yourselves? Sort of like some
exactly.
bad plastic surgery we've seen on celebrities, right? It's like, what
Right,
have you done to
right.
yourself? I don't even recognize you anymore.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I feel like you have to honor the past,
Yeah.
and we want to evolve, of course, and especially, a lot of nonprofit organizations do have a lot of past history,
Hmm.
and you don't want to just forget that. So you want to be able to grow and evolve. And, maybe it's just, you're using kind of, an element of the old logo to kind of give a nod, to that past logo because yeah, people get attached, and especially if it's like board members, longtime supporters, like they're gonna be like, wait a second, what happened and why? So
That's right. It's like, where's the organization we knew
yes,
that we are dedicated to? Because reputation and branding all comes back to relationships. That's
yes,
why we have a strong brand. We want to build strong relationships. And a lot of us call
definitely.
nonprofit management the relationship industry because that's what we
Hmm.
do is we build relationships, we manage them, we keep them
Hmm.
healthy, we help realize mission fulfillment
Hmm.
through our relationships. And that's really what we want to work toward with a strong brand because it is the personality of the
Yes.
organization in a lot of ways, not just reputation, but it's our personality. Are we a fun, energetic organization? Are we a serious, stolid organization? And
Hmm.
there's room for all kinds in the world.
Oh,
So,
definitely.
but I was wondering before we wrap up our episode today,
Hmm.
in our first episode of season 8 with another communications expert, Cynthia Lockery, we were talking about the power of the pause,
Hmm.
the quiet moment in a conversation. When we're talking about branding, is there a space for that quiet moment?
Oh gosh, that's a good one, and it's a tough one for me because I have a hard time in, including pauses when I talk. It's, I love to talk. I love to converse with people. But I do think that there should be a pause. There shouldn't be, um, I guess, a good example would be, sometimes organizations feel like, oh, something happened in the news. Do we need to respond to it? Or, there's something, that's happening. And I feel like there does, if your organization has that reason to respond really quickly, yes, absolutely that should happen. But if it's going to feel, performative or not genuine, maybe there is a pause. until you determine, what is the best way for us to respond? How should we proceed? So I think that's one case is really, making sure. I mean, authenticity is such a big part of a brand is
Mhm.
really, being true to yourself. So, like you said in your example, some brands are a little bit more, they're not super fun because they're just not, and it might be really the work that they do is a more serious type of work. So they're not going to make it lighthearted because that would be inappropriate. So I think kind of knowing, who your brand is, being true to that, being authentic. And if it means taking a pause in a situation or being reflective, being respectful of the situation or a moment, I think that's a way to take that pause because why do people fill up spaces? I ask myself that question. My husband will sometimes point out, like, you're laughing a lot. Are you nervous? And then I have to think about it. Oh, maybe I am, so sometimes maybe we are filling up those spaces because we feel nervous. We don't know what to say. We feel like if there was a quiet moment, you'd feel awkward, So I think that, maybe kind of getting comfortable with that as a brand, sometimes taking a pause and having a quiet moment is definitely useful. I know I can use it myself.
Well, and I think that when we think about branding and its importance in our ongoing conversation with the world around us, having that opportunity to take that pause
Hmm.
and not feel like we have to comment on everything and not feel like we have to constantly be filling up social media with yet another
Yes.
announcement.
Yes.
I use social media to let people know what I'm doing professionally, but I do try to manage it so that it comes out on certain days of the week and
Hmm.
maybe just once. Sometimes I'll make an announcement only one time. I don't beat it to death.
Right, right.
But sometimes I think I am probably over promoting certain things, but that's another thing you can counsel me on later. We don't need to counsel me in front of
Yes.
the audience, but it's been a great conversation on branding and look forward to having you back on another topic, Lydia, because you're so fun to talk to. But as
Thank
you
you.
know, I like to ask my guests, what is the one thought you'd like the audience to take away today, and how can they get in touch with you if they'd like to learn more about branding in a noisy world?
Yes. So I would say my number one thing, which we just talked about, was be authentic.
Mhm.
And this is really something that, as an individual, myself as a business owner, I feel like, people have told me that, they'll say, oh, I could, I read your posts on LinkedIn or I read your blog and I can really get, who you are, through the way that you express yourself. I feel like that is such a win. That is like better than anything and analytics can tell me, about my outreach. And I really feel like the same goes for organizations where when you see their outreach or you go to an event and you really say, oh, this just feels like them, it really just, you can feel it. We're going back to that emotional, aspect of branding. So I would say just understand what that is about your organization, where people just feel comfortable and they get who you are and they feel good about it. And authenticity is really what it's all about. So be authentic if you need some help getting to that point. I am happy to talk to any of the listeners, and you can find me at lsvdesign.com. So that's my website and my blog, and I am at LSV Design on social media. I am most active on LinkedIn, so please do connect with me on LinkedIn. I'd love to stay in touch in that platform.
Well, that's excellent. I agree that we should all try to be as authentic as possible. So, Lydia, thanks for sharing your advice on how we can maintain our reputation and our brand strength in a noisy world.
Thank you so much, Cecilia, for having me here a second time, and I am excited to come back again. It's just always so wonderful to chat with you.
Oh, well, thank you. And you as well, as I said a few minutes ago. And yeah, we will definitely be having you back later this year. So we'll have to find another topic for you because your insights are so valuable.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. And unfortunately, we have to go rogue for now, but we'll be back next time with another exciting episode. So, one more reminder, if you haven't already, follow us or subscribe on your favorite service. We're pretty much everywhere. And speaking of our podcast, you can find this episode featuring Lidia and some of our past, well, actually, most of our past episodes on our podcast page on our website. So if you go to roguetulips.com podcast, you can find Lydia's episode, share it with your friends, and catch up on the past episodes. If you'd like to learn more about what the heck does Cecilia actually do as a consultant, go to our services page on the website and you can see some of the areas where we could work together. Please, let's talk and see if we can work together. If I'm not the right person, I can help you find the best fit for you for your project needs. But let's talk and see if we can work together. If you're looking for CAE exam prep education, check out our education page. You also will want to check out our ethics webinar. We're kicking that off in February. So if you're looking for ethics education, please check out that page. Also, I really want to encourage you to look at our Lead Forward program. It's a new initiative where we're focusing on leadership topics and management topics for the 21st century. Our first course that we're offering is called Adaptive Leadership. So please check that out as well. And if you want to know what's on my mind, which frankly, I'd like to know most of the time too, because I don't know what I'm going to talk about, check out my blog page. You never know what the topic will be every week. So check that out. You can also subscribe to our newsletter. So that's it for this week. On behalf of Lydia and myself, we'll see you next time. That's it for this week. I hope you really loved this episode as much as I did. Thanks for listening. Learn more about how our experience and knowledge at Rogue Tulips can give your organization the strategic edge to reach its goals. Check out our website at roguetulips.com. We'd love to talk with you and see how we can work together.